Okay, we're going to switch topics and talk about some marketing issues for domain names. So the first segment we just did was to talk about the actual registration of how you buy a domain name. Now I want to talk about some of the marketing issues, which are some funny things. First of all, the Google test. So one of the things that you should think about when you're going to buy a domain name is take the word and put it into Google and find out what else it is associated with. And the reason why I use my domain name, Whittaker.com, is because I don't have to worry about getting confused with any porn stars in some other country or some criminal that got arrested for some awful crime in some far-off place or whatever it might be. I made up the word. And as you can see, all the 16,000 references on the web are all related to Tim Richardson, the e-commerce prof. Which is a good thing. So what I'm then suggesting is when you're thinking about choosing a name to register for a domain name, you might want to make up something with a combination of your last initials or something very, very short, and then use the Google test to find out if it is or is not available in other places. Now, if I do the Google test with Tim Richardson by itself, I find out that, interestingly, there's a guy in the US who's an inspirational speaker, and there's some guy in England who's a world's expert on chocolate, which I'm not likely to get confused with unless it's as a consumer of chocolate. And there's also this guy in Indonesia who's a chartered accountant and so on. That's another reason why I used Whittaker.com, because Richardson is quite common. So, the Google test. The other thing about domain names is the conflict with other companies. And one of the examples of this is when PETA, you know, the organization PETA, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, was in conflict with the people who were organizing the circuses. So when this was taking place a number of years ago, they started to buy other domain names back and forth to try to get their political message. So PETA bought the website circuses.com, and when you go to circuses.com, you don't find anything about circuses, you find about animals and pictures of Pamela Anderson and all kinds of stuff like that, protesting about treatment of animals. So that's another aspect of domain names, is they become used by people to protest against things, like supporttamiltigers.com, or stoptamiltigers.com, or supporttorontomapleleafs.com, or torontomapleleafsuck.com. There's a whole bunch of websites. In fact, you could go to the suck.com website and find walmartsucks.com, mcdonaldsucks.com, kfedsucks.com, all these types of things where people are protesting. An FAQ which talks about some of the things you can or cannot do with domain names. If a domain name is taken, what do I do if I forget to register or forget to renew? Now, if it happens that you forget to renew your domain name, someone can't take it right away. There's a grace period of 30 days in which you're allowed to renew. After that time period has elapsed, then somebody else can take it. So one of my students that was in BCS a couple of years ago, Luong, anybody recognize him? Came up with this fascinating list of bad choices for domain names. Like this one, which I can't say on camera, but it has to do with people who represent famous actors and actresses. But when you spell it this way, it comes across as a different kind of a meaning. This one, expertsexchange.com, which people probably wouldn't read it quite like that. But these are all legitimate websites. There it is, the expertsexchange.com. This one is also funny, Pen Island, which if you pronounce it differently comes out something. Another website that's quite famous and didn't bother changing their name, but when they print the letters, you can see the space between the letter N and the I. One of the things I thought was funny was this one, the Italian Power Generation Company, which was so embarrassed now they say they're under construction. This one is Mole Station Nursery, IP Anywhere. The First Coming Methodist Church website, which is changed to this one. And the most famous one of all was GoTahoe.com, which then changed its website to GoTahoeNorth.com, as opposed to the southern part of Lake Tahoe, because that actually was on a number of websites talking about how funny it was that they had picked that as a domain name. The other thing, too, is about expired domain names which are available. Some ones that had been bought 3 and 4 years ago, and then the company went bankrupt. As you know, when the dot-com boom was popular in 2001, 2002, 2003, many companies bought many variations of spelling of their domain names. There was TorontoApartments.com, TorontoCondos.com, Condominiums.com, and .ca, and so on. And as a consequence of those companies no longer being in business, the .ca domain name is available. So those are, I wanted to know. Here's a term, domain tasting. What do you think that means, domain tasting? Well, what's wine and cheese tasting, Mr. Walker?
Tasting it to see if you like it or not.
Okay. So in the context of search engine ranking, domain tasting is when you buy a domain name for a short period and see how well it does in Google. Then you either get rid of it or you change the spelling and get another domain name. That's what domain tasting is. And of course, Google does not like being tricked. People are using this as a technique to try to figure out what's the best spelling of the domain name compared to other domain names which are somewhat similar. And that's the end of the section on domain marketing issues.